I'm Victoria from the Academy of Conscious Creators, and I want to welcome you to the Academy's first virtual Freedom Summit. And we're featuring inspiring stories of greatness, wisdom, and empowerment. And so, as many begin to awaken, being able to offer conversations that explore the depth of our spirituality and how we address the problems that we're facing in our outer world are both empowering and crucial to the survival and transformation of humanity and all of nature. So let's dive in. Freedom is a topic that has been at the forefront of our evolution since perhaps the beginning of human existence. And more recently, we've witnessed on a global scale liberties being restricted in the name of safety. Yet if we were to take a closer look, we would notice that all sorts of safety restrictions are imposed on our everyday life, from seatbelt safety to food regulations, all for the public good. However, freedom is a choice. Freedom of choice is one of our most fundamental needs, and studies have shown that when freedom is taken away, it can cause mental and sometimes physical pain. So, if restricting freedoms may actually have negative consequences for our behaviour and health, why is it that we're discouraged and seemingly unable to think for ourselves and trust our own choices? So here to enlighten us is my cherished friend and guest for this episode, Nanice Ellis. Nanice is a transpersonal life coach who supports people all over the world to live their dreams. Referred to as the Nanice effect, she teaches people how to make quantum jumps from where they are to where they want to be. And having freed herself from her own prison of low self-esteem, she has turned her many life challenges into a powerful gift to give to those who are ready to free themselves from living in a way that no longer serves them and to become conscious creators of their own lives. According to Nanice, freedom is not a privilege, nor is it guaranteed, even in a free society. Welcome, Nanice.
Hi, Victoria.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So let's start with that statement. So why is freedom neither a privilege nor is it guaranteed?
Mm-hmm. Well, in our essence, or our soul essence, we are all free. And then we incarnate into these physical bodies with perimeters. And most of us never even realize what those perimeters are because we just accept them as fact. We don't question them. And whatever we are taught very young and we never question, we reinforce as we get older. And so many of us end up being adults in children's minds, with children's minds, because we don't have the ability to push against reality or to question authority or to question rules or to question anything. And we just go along with what seems to be the most popular or unpopular narrative, but something that we seem to align with, all the while never really questioning, like, well, where are we? What is this place? We've been
Right.
told a lot of things, but what's true? What's true? And oftentimes people are afraid to even question this because it can literally destroy our sense of security. And we don't realize this, but our sense of security is so dependent on what we believe is real, even if we don't like it. We don't like it. And of course, you and I both know that that's a false sense of security.
Yeah.
And what's happening now, I believe, is that the entire world is being pushed and pressured towards questioning reality and our rights to participate in reality
Yes.
and question the narrative, as they say. And for me personally, Victoria, and I'm sure I've shared this with you many times, I believe that we came here for this time, that this was not an accident. I feel like we were fortunate to incarnate, but we also came for a purpose. And I believe that purpose is now. And I know personally, I've been working for this moment my whole life since I was 11 years old, knowing there was something. And it has been upon us for the last few years in a very, very large way. This is the global awakening. And this requires questioning reality and claiming our freedom. Because if we don't do that, then we can never be free. We can't be free without questioning what we have been taught and told and preached to.
Yeah, really interesting points you've raised. And one of them that I picked up on was, of course, you say that we're free from the beginning, you know, we're kind of born free, but it's the programs or the early childhood programming that we receive that starts to dim that light within us and kind of send us to sleep, essentially. So when, like, at what age would you say that this starts to happen, and when we start to then doubt our own judgment and maybe feel ashamed of having our own thoughts and feelings?
It's happening very young. Up until around the age of 5, 4 or 5, a child is developing their sense of reality. That's what a child is doing, and they're learning from parents and teachers and friends and everything that they hear. It's all input on what reality is, how I should behave in reality, what I need to do and believe and act in order for others to accept me. We have this very deep intrinsic need to be accepted, and acceptance requires, being worthy. And so there's this worthiness program that automatically gets activated in order to keep us alive. If you go back to, for example, like tribal times, your individual survival depended upon being part of the tribe. So if you suddenly did or said something that did not go with the tribe and you couldn't be excommunicated, then your life was at risk. And that innate desire to be part of the tribe, to be accepted, is in all of us. And so those first few years of our lives, we are literally determining what it is, who we need to be, basically, in order to survive. And of course, we're unaware of that. Chances are, our parents and their parents were unaware of it. And so what we ultimately have manifested now is generations and generations and generations of passing upon this idea of reality from one to the next. And that has all come to this great, beautiful threshold where I believe we're about to burst through to really understand, who we are, the power, the human spirit, consciousness.
Yeah, and it does feel like, as you were saying, it's like we're kind of in this birth canal about to be birthed into who we really are, free of all this conditioning that, as you were explaining, gets picked up from family and schooling and society and culture and all of these things. So linking this,
and that's the way it's supposed to. I'm sorry, that's the way it's supposed to be. Like that's nothing has gone wrong. That's how we come into this world. That's how we learn.
Yes.
I think where things kind of break down is that around the time when adolescence begins, that's meant to be a time where the child, where that new adolescent is meant to question reality, meant to push against it, meant to, test the limits. That's our natural inclination and what needs to happen in order for us to actually become a conscious, awake, participating being in society, whatever that might mean for us, right? And we have, again, emerged from generations where adolescence, instead of being held as this very special time when a child actually has the ability to become an adult, we suppress our teens, our adolescents. It's very common for parents, as soon as their kids start pushing against the rules or questioning certain beliefs or traditions or whatever it might be, parents, instead of holding a space for their child to grow and basically become a conscious human being, they tighten the rules. They create consequences to go outside the parameter of what's considered to be, the true reality. And so because of that, and this happens all over the world, but I'm specifically talking about Western society, what happens is that the development is stifled at that age if we never actually go through adolescence. And that's why many of us who actually have evolved or become suddenly aware of just how many people, or we call them sleepy, but really they just never developed past 12 or 13 years old in their consciousness, their emotional ability. And that's what's happening now. And like everybody's being pushed, to grow up. So not just wake up, but to grow up. Right. And yes, become conscious adults participating.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is generational trauma is passed down through the lines. And so that might even mean that, the thoughts that we're having, our behaviors and our emotions are not even ours. And so what are the consequences of when a child's emotional developmental process has failed?
The consequences are what we're experiencing. And if we don't go through the developmental stage of adolescence and learn how to think for ourselves, then we become adults who don't know how to think for ourselves. We become adults who have the tendency to follow the rules, go with the flow, so to speak, and the flow is all going down that mainstream. We hear that word a lot, but actually think of a stream a river, and everybody's going down the central mainstream of that river, just going with, and we don't even realize that. And it's and so then we can be controlled in a mass and not even know it, rather than think for ourselves and decide, okay, we come to crossroads, we can go down this stream or we could go down this stream, and little paddle of the canoe, the kayak, right? And we can steer our vessel. But without evolving into conscious adults, we don't have that ability. And so we just go with the mainstream because that's the easiest way to flow, so to speak. And this is the consequence. The world that we see now, right? Well, we have many people who are waking up and many people who are still being pressured into developing into conscious adults.
Yeah, and I guess it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's creating this actual false sense of security, even though we feel, we're safe in following the crowd. And the false sense of security is perhaps, self-betrayal, because we're abandoning ourselves and our own personal wants and needs in favor of, I better do it this way because this is how everyone else is doing it, even if it doesn't make me feel good. And then that has brings up the self-worth issues again. And perhaps on the opposite scale of that, we might even then develop a grandiose sense of self and entitlement. So we're kind of playing with two personas here. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yes. And there, so this is the perimeter of reality, we'll call it that, most of us live within, and people actually protect that perimeter. That's why we don't like to look at things that might threaten our sense of reality, because that's very insecure. That makes us feel very insecure. If we don't have that inner security within ourselves, that connection to source, and our reality is questioned, or we question our reality, that could feel like a nervous breakdown. That could feel like life is crumbling and we don't know how to function. That's the cognitive dissonance. And so in order to actually navigate consciously, we have to have that inner sense of security to push against the perimeters of reality. Right. And otherwise, Just imagine a child in an adult situation and not having the coping mechanisms. It's rather like that, because if we're still, pre-adolescent, 12, 13 years old, we never have had to think for ourselves, trust ourselves. I mean, this really all goes back to trusting ourselves.
Yeah.
Rather than, if we can trust ourselves, then we will trust the experts. We will trust the authorities. We will trust. We have no choice if we don't trust ourselves. And if we don't trust ourselves, then we can be controlled.
Yes.
And I think that is the key here to freedom, to exactly what we're talking about. This need to trust oneself, even if, and especially if it's different than what reality is telling us.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking of, some experiences that I've had myself and also that I've heard from others that, this can play out in all sorts of dynamics that make our life whole and full. In the workplace, we become frightened to maybe leave if things aren't feeling right because of that issue where we're not able to trust our own guidance. And maybe we're attached to the status and think, oh well, if I leave, then what will that do for my reputation? Or obviously attached to money, if I leave, where will I get my source of income from? And when we're kind of up in the logical mind, we're not really coming from our, what our heart is maybe whispering us to, that's maybe a better path for us. And I know that my own experience, that is what you were talking about, can create this chaos within ourselves because we're really being asked to take a brave step into the unknown. And of course, it does feel scary. But trusting that once we take that step, that actually the chaos might start to disperse is a really big and courageous choice to make. So what would you share then about how to sort of start cultivating this inner freedom? How do we acquire it?
I think it begins with, and everybody's different, so there's so many nuances. But the very, very old expression, know thyself, coming back to self, coming back to the inner being. We're a society that's very easily distracted, and it's not to be distracted these days. There's so much going on, and it's crazy making for anybody, even somebody who has that inner security. And there is this inner being in every single one of us, this inner being that knows the truth, that is free, that is strong, that is so powerful. We have powers beyond anything we've ever been taught. In fact, we've been taught to suppress our powers, which would be very cool if we talked about that in a bit too. And so the first step is coming back to self and becoming conscious. Right? So conscious, not just of what's happening out there, but conscious of what's happening inside. And it may take layers, because what often happens, layers of going deeper. So we believe, the questioning our beliefs to get to what's really at the core of our being. And it's a process. And right now it's being accelerated because the outside world is putting all this stress and pressure on us. But
that's right.
Nonetheless, no matter who we are, where we are, what we believe or don't believe, we each have that inner core being that is the universe, that is source, that is God, that is, and it's always there. As long as we are alive, it is there, and even beyond life, of course. And so it's not like just some of us received this. Every one of us has this. And I believe the first key is to come back to that inner stillness. Yeah. And then start listening to your feelings. We have been taught to disregard our emotions, to suppress our emotions, to rise above them. But actually, our emotions are our guidance. How we feel, we all have the ability as empaths, every one of us, even the most logical person. And so coming back into that, the inner being, finding your core self, and being still with that, from there, everything can move forward. So when we question reality and things aren't what we thought, we can come back to the stillness within that knowing. And we can also start, again, listening to our feelings as guidance. Now, if we have trauma, emotions or feelings that come up may be trauma related. And so it's important to also process old trauma, which is a topic upon itself, right? But nonetheless, if we can move into the center, we have the ability to feel our way through anything. Like we actually know what's right or wrong, what's true and not true. And it really comes down to that. It seems very complex out there. There's so much going on. There's so many options, so many choices, there's so many stories.
Yeah.
But really, we have the ability in each situation to know, like, is this right or wrong? Like, we actually know the difference between right and wrong, between true and untrue. And that compass is forever vibrant within our beings. And that's what we need to come back to in order to be free.
Absolutely. And, as you were talking there, it seems that, with all of this distraction going on in the outer world, that is, keeping us disconnected from our ability to, as you say, feel our way through life. And
yes.
I just want to pick up as well, because you also mentioned that, how powerful we are. And of course, as soon as we start to really connect back with our bodies and our feelings and use that as our navigation, our guidance, that does,
Yes.
it does give us the power to make choices and decisions that are right for us. And when we make a choice that's right for us, actually, it doesn't matter about anyone else, because it naturally becomes right for everyone else, because we're in our authenticity. And
right.
I want to pick up on a bit about your personal transformation, if you're happy to share a little bit, because
yes.
we talked when I introduced you, and I know you've talked about it yourself, your own personal challenges that you now use as your powerful tool to help others. So do you want to share a little bit about your personal journey, and what was the biggest transformation for you?
Absolutely. And I would first like to add that I totally agree, when we do what's best for ourselves, we do what's best for everyone. And the reason for that is because we're all connected to the same one source.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're a cell, we're each cells in the body of this omnipotent source. And so this source is not wanting controversy or contrast. Like ultimately, the source is about connection and union and freedom and sovereignty. This is the direction. And now it's just kind of we're playing this game of duality, so to speak, so that we can actually wake up and evolve. And that we need that. Like we just were born into a sort of Eden where everything was perfect, and we had everything that we needed, and there was no contrast and no issues, and we actually would not have the ability to evolve. There would be no reason to, because we could just go with the mainstream, with the flow. There would be every reason to do that, but it's because of the controversy, the contrast, the issues, the chaos, that we now have the ability to become conscious and to wake up to that. The chaos actually spurs consciousness.
Yeah.
And without it, we wouldn't evolve. We might have a very lovely life, but we would have no ability to evolve. So there's a purpose behind the chaos from a divine function. And that's where we are now. But ultimately, this divinity is ushering us towards remembering unity and oneness, but not even in a so much in a collective form, but in an individual form. that makes up the collective. So it's not about losing our individuality or identity, but it's actually about discovering who we really are as a unique being in the universe and how we're connected to everyone else and how that all fits together.
Yeah.
So thank you for offering your wisdom. Absolutely. It's very true. And so now you asked about my journey.
Yeah, I was curious because obviously you've brought so much wisdom to the conversation.
Thank you. So it's a question of where I focus. The journey has been a very long and I could say beautiful now, but at the time it didn't feel beautiful. It did not. It felt at times like I would never get through it. I was tormented, confused, depressed for a number of years. I had an eating disorder, chronic fatigue, and this was early. This was early in my life. And it has been pain and suffering that's actually pushed me to become more conscious. And that is actually the purpose of pain and suffering. People oftentimes think, oh, there's no purpose, but there actually is a purpose to pain and suffering. It is the way the divine operates in order to wake us up and make us pay attention. And so for me, I had a very challenging childhood. And the real turning point probably was when I was about 16 and fell in love for the first time and actually ran away from home to be with this boy man who was a year older than me that I was totally in love with. And he became very abusive. It was happening gradually, but it ultimately reached a point where I believed that he would kill me if I tried to leave. And the place that I was at that point was a relief because at least there was a way out. And so I was at this ultimate level of powerlessness. I did not believe I had any power. And my only way out was the hands of my abuser. And so that's how low that I was.
Yeah.
So you could say I was passively suicidal. I wasn't going to do anything to take my own life, but I truly believed that he would kill me. And it did come to that. And by the grace of God, something shifted. Something shifted in him. After I left for the upteenth time, and I finally found in myself somehow the courage to get out of this abusive relationship, something just clicked where I could start seeing life beyond my current experience.
Yeah.
And through that, something inside of me sparked. And when he realized that I was leaving for good, he came after me and abducted me from school, and he was going to kill me. It was very clear. He even very clearly, I can't have you. No one else can. And he was going to kill me. And I remember in that moment, we were in his car, and he was driving and punching me at the same time. My face into the car window, which wasn't the first time, but this time, I was very aware his intent was to kill me, and I didn't want to die, and I wasn't afraid. It was a very interesting moment. I had no fear, but I didn't want to die. And I knew that I could not overcome him with strength or any other way. And it was in that moment that the divine source stepped in and saved my life. But I think I had to get to that point first. I had to get to that point where I chose to live.
Right.
I chose to live. That was really the key. Like, I made that choice to live. And most people never consciously made that choice. We think just because we're here, we made that choice. And I think that's the first step to freedom, like actually choosing to be here, to live. And in that moment, I was pushed, pressured, forced to make that choice. And when I did, miraculously, Source showed up for me and literally saved my life. And there's lots of details, but from that point on, I was on this path of discovering myself, whoever I was. And at that point, I didn't like myself very much. So, I was like, but I knew that that was the key. And about a year later, I discovered I was pregnant. And that was a shock to my life. And first didn't know what I was going to do. But ultimately, when I came to this place, like, I can't make this decision. I cannot make this decision. As soon as I came to that realization, immediately the decision was made. And I knew it was so clear that I was already a mother,
Yeah.
that I was already a mother. It was little, not even a fetus yet, and I felt it and made the choice to, have my child and keep my child and raise my child. And from that point on, I wanted to give him something that I didn't have growing up, and that was a sense of worth. And I also knew that if I didn't have it myself, I could not give it to him or anyone else. And so that set me on this journey of really finding, at that point, I was calling it self-esteem. And my entire life was dedicated to that. And it was an amazing and arduous process.
Sure.
And at some point, I realized that I had somehow gotten to the point where I embodied it. And it was then that I had a great desire to share that with others, because it's there for all of us.
Right.
It's there for all of us. So,
Wow. And I'm so glad that you did, because, you've given a kind of example of these two extremes of obviously where when our emotional development is disrupted, on the one hand, we have you were feeling powerless and looping in these cycles of situations that kind of reinforce this low self-worth.
yes.
And the partner that you partnered with kind of was at the other extreme, where perhaps had this sense of what I mentioned earlier, this sense of entitlement.
Yes.
And probably triggered from, well, whatever it was, but this dysfunction in the family, and being able to claim this self-worth that you said. And what I think is key that you shared here is that decision to live. And
Yes.
I myself have had an experience of recognizing that I wasn't choosing life, and I'm sure many people tuning in can think of times where they've been very low, and sometimes we
Yes.
haven't been able to see a clearer way out. And then it kind of links with what you were saying about all in this chaos there is some kind of purpose, and out of that chaos comes some form of clarity. And
Yes.
I just want to pick up, because you touched on, obviously you then became a mother yourself, and
Yes.
that responsibility to bring worth to a child where you didn't have experience of that necessarily. You had to
Right.
find that for yourself. And I think you mentioned
Yes.
to me that part of this big awakening, this big shift, is the reconnection to the mother. Is it like the motherhood and the great mother? So I wonder if that's a good
Yeah.
sort of segue into
Yeah.
talking a bit more about that.
Yes,
Thank you for
absolutely.
sharing your story.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for asking. It's kind of the abridged version.
Yeah, I get that. But it's
Yeah.
important, because we don't, sometimes people think, oh, we just got there. And of course, we don't always realize
No one.
the strife and struggles that people have been through in order to really start to live and feel fulfilled.
Right. I've come to believe that's the only way. That is the only way. And it's what we do with those challenges and that determine who we become. Like, we actually get to choose who we want to be.
Yeah.
And how few of us actually have learned that it's a choice. Yes, there's genetics and there's, nature, nurture, and that whole debate, but at an even deeper sense, that we have the ability to choose who we are and to embody that. And that's a process that unfolds from day to day, month to month, year to year. Who do I want to be? And what behaviors, choices, actions actually align with that choice? So
Right.
So yes, it's very easy to look at somebody and say, oh, they have succeeded at, fill in the blank, and they seem powerful or worthy or whatever. But truly, no one who embodies their worth and their power gets to that point without going through tremendous challenges. So it may look pretty when you get there, but the path, it's it could be muddy and full of debris for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, in some ways, it's then worth the, that, I guess you kind of have some meaning to what you've been through to come out of the other side. And of course,
Yes.
as you were speaking, choosing who we are, of course, until we grasp that concept, the person we are is the person that other people have told us that we are, whether it's, how we've been brought up in our families, what experiences maybe we had in school, going into the workplace, all these layers of telling us who we are, and of course name calling and attaching all of those labels to ourselves. We then go around believing that that's who we are and acting out, in those behaviors and emotions and thoughts based on what we've been told. And it isn't an easy task, one, to necessarily see it, and then when you do see that truth, then what? Then how do I well, for one, we have to get rid of these, we have to drop these layers, and that in itself is not easy, because we are so used to looping in these cycles. And then the more we drop those layers, we're kind of in this empty, void, like, who am I then?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so, again, going back to the stage of adolescence and adding on that it is never too late to actually go through our own adolescence. We can do that at any age, and requires exactly what we have been discussing. And it's been making the choice to bring that consciousness to our inner beings and to our reality simultaneously, and begin to question all the beliefs, one at a time, that we have adopted or assumed without question. And having the courage to drop beliefs that don't support who we are or who we want to be, and also the courage to consciously choose beliefs that support who we are truly, and who we want to be in life. And so it's actually a transformation that happens from deep within, and life is like pushing us that way. So it's like when we have the stress and the pressure coming from all directions, this everybody's experiencing now, like there's no escape from it, it's everywhere right now. This is really what life is asking us to do, is to choose life first, and then choose who we want to be. and in that process examine all our beliefs and our values and where did they come from and do they work, and look for incongruities, like where are beliefs not congruent.
Yes.
So you look for that contrast, like, well, I believe this, but life has actually shown me something else, or I don't, or to take that feedback, because it's a feedback loop. Life, the purpose of life is actually it's feedback. So we develop as an individual human being, and then life is constantly like a mirror giving us feedback to who we are and asking us, hey, do you like this? Like looking in the mirror, getting ready in the morning, you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, my hair looks great today, or my hair doesn't, or the shirt and doesn't look right, to changing my shirt. Right? It's literally that. And so when life is giving us this feedback about ourselves, what do we do with it? And if we can actually take it as feedback, and it's very nuanced to understand it, and this is the part of like really beginning to understand oneself. Because as you said, we only exist in relationship to what is not us. It is only with other people and situations and systems that we find ourselves. And if we were to embrace adolescence, now would be the time that we question all of it, that we push against, we poke, we question everything. And we may discover that things that we question actually are true in the truest sense. And we may discover that things that we believe are not true. And then we can choose to what we're going to do with that.
Yeah.
And sculpt ourselves at a very deep core level.
Yeah. It's really taking it's receiving that information. I suppose it is, the feedback is information, and where sometimes we've kind of fall down is we get pulled in or sucked into the dramas that are going on and taking it all personally. But if we were to just take a little step back and see it as that feedback, that information that's coming in, and then saying, okay, what do I do with this, as you were saying? And that with that comes responsibility. And do you think that maybe that's why a lot of people choose to just stay with the crowd, because it is asking for them to take responsibility?
Yes.
What would you say?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And that can be quite scary. Sorry.
Oh, what's that?
No. Be scary.
Yes. Very scary. Yeah. Because to take responsibility, you have to trust yourself. And if you've never learned to trust yourself, then it's overwhelming. It's much easier just to go with the crowd, go with the mainstream without question. The responsibility begins internally, but it also requires action.
Okay.
Every shift that we have in our personal evolution, at least in this dimension, this realm, requires some sort of behavior or actions that support that inner responsibility. So if we were just on a spiritual path and we got to this place of inner sovereignty, inner responsibility, but we're still, just going along with things that don't feel right for whatever reason, then that's where there's a breakdown. That's not congruent. And so when our inner selves, our inner beliefs have evolved, it requires action steps in order to fully embody that. And oftentimes that is what life asks. Life, like an example, a very basic example, someone who finds themselves in a job, a career, or a relationship that's not working for them. And they know that deep inside, but they're staying. That's a split. And unless we resolve that, we become stifled in that area of our life, and our whole lives become stifled around that area.
Right.
And so part of that responsibility is like, what do we really know inside, and what actions are necessary in order to live according to our inner guide.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's very scary. It's very scary because, there's always that, oh, what if I'm making the wrong decision? Or, but, it's easier this way, or consequences, or, there's I don't want to be alone, like there's a whole, or I don't want to be penniless, or, there's a whole bunch of factors going on. And, this goes back to the development in adolescence, because ultimately what is meant to happen is that this young adolescent starts questioning life. Right. And a parent or guide is there to discuss, to share, to hold space.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately the growing teen starts to make their own choices with natural consequences. Right. And the parent or the guide who is evolved, mature, is ideally meant to be that support.
Yeah.
And to offer wisdom, not to tell them what to do, but to hold a space where anything can be discussed, and that growing child begins to mature, and ultimately over the course of years, maybe months, everything's accelerated now, but naturally years, that adolescent becomes an adult through taking responsibility for their lives, by owning their beliefs, owning their values, owning the feedback loop that is reality, like owning all of that, and listening to the inner voice, trusting it, and taking actions accordingly. And again, as you so wisely mentioned, that whatever occurs from that space supports the whole, because we are all connected. We are all connected. So, so right now, we're as a whole, as a society, you could say that we're at the point of adolescence, and which is so exciting and confusing and everything else. But like, we literally now have the choice to revisit adolescence and to naturally do what was intended, which is question our beliefs, question reality, use reality, life as a feedback system, and ultimately take responsibility for everything that we experience, whether it's near or far, and make choices accordingly that support, who we are and who we want to be. This is the call right now from life.
Yeah. And we have to answer it.
Yes, we're being forced to.
We have to answer.
Yeah.
And tell me, let's talk a little bit about, what will it take then to make confident choices to support our personal freedom? And of course, then that naturally brings a sense of inner safety. And when we feel safe and secure within, that obviously reflects on the outer world. And maybe we won't need others to be watching out, because we'll be able to make those choices that are right for us. Does that make sense?
That's brilliant. And the question is,
so what will it take for us to make confident choices? How do we embody this?
Well, first it comes back to going within and learning to listen to our intuition.
Right.
This is key. This is key. And making choices according to our inner guidance. And again, it can be as simple as like that sense of right and wrong. Like we all have that sense of right and wrong. I know a lot of spiritual teachings, it's like there is no right or wrong. And in one sense, that's true.
Yeah.
But in this level of reality, at this point in our evolution, There's absolutely a right and wrong. Absolutely. And we know it. And sometimes it's more subtle and sometimes it's more extreme, but it's always there. It's always there. Like we know that it's it's wrong to, hurt a child or, an animal. Like we just have that sense like, oh, that's wrong, right? That feels evil to some extent, right? That feels unnatural because that's what evil is. It's unnatural. Right? And hence, like we also know what's right, to help somebody in need um,
Yeah.
or to make a choice and follow through with action according to what we know is right or what we know is wrong. And this really is the key. I said it's seems so complex, so many nuances, but you can come right back to this. Does this feel right or does this feel wrong? And just by doing that, your inner system will give you an answer. You may not even understand why at first, but then you could inquire. But we all have that sense. That you hear so many people after something occurs and that they don't like, and they're like, I knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I knew that was going to happen. Well, that was your inner guidance. And when that occurs, I like to say, instead of like judging myself, I say note to self. So in the future, like when I know something, I'm going to follow that knowing accordingly. So that this is the big step, I would say, for humanity to listen to our inner being. And this would be a complete uh, discussion about freedom without talking about love.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of it is very, heady and, you know, um, but love truly is a superpower.
Yeah.
And this brings back, we were headed before regarding the Great Mother and motherhood is the greatest embodiment of love, as to have a child, uh, for everybody, but particularly for a woman to have a baby. This love springs forth that, oh, I've often said, like, we don't even know what love is until we have a child. That was my experience, and many women agree with that. Like something happens, and that love is so powerful that it can move mountains, that it can transform reality.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's like listening to the inner self and making choices accordingly. But if we don't have the love of something, then those are empty choices. So what do we love? Like, we love our children to make choices that will affect them and their children? And what choices are we making? Do we love our country, our community? Do we love our freedom? Like, what do we love? And from that place of love and making choices according to our inner guidance, this is unstoppable. And when you have two people and then three people and five people and 10 people experiencing this, it's exponential.
Yeah.
It's exponential. So regardless of all the nefarious stuff going on in the world, when we become true and honest with ourselves and we discover love with this pure essence, it's like it magically wakes up life. Not just magically. I remember when I was depressed for many years. I had I experienced depression. I don't want to say I had, but I experienced. And I remember traveling and going to beautiful places and just being like, "Oh, this is nice." I remember being on top of the Eiffel Tower, which I dreamed of my whole life. And I'm up there and I'm like, oh, okay, this is nice. But I didn't feel it. Like something was missing, And then years later, going back to the same place, but this time with love of life, love of myself, of God, of my children, of like just love. And it's like reality pops. You can go on a hike, right? And so you're just kind of like, oh, I'm just doing this for the exercise, whatever. It's like things just seem maybe gray, like even on a sunny day, they're just like kind of plain. But if you go and something all of a sudden catches your eye, butterfly whizzes by, or the trees and the wind, and they're speaking to you, or something magical happens, and you pay attention, like, oh, that's for me. Like life is talking to me. And then this love sparks inside, and you open your eyes to a reality that was always there but didn't exist before for you.
Right.
And the key to get to that reality, it's love, because love has a frequency and vibration. And so we could be in the same exact place, the same exact time, void of love. Well, not void, but it's hidden, it's suppressed inside, and life is drab or difficult even. And we can be in the same place at the same time, with the cliche of our hearts being open. And because it's not a cliche, there's a reason that we say this, that our hearts are open and we feel the love of life and the love for life. It's like Alice in Wonderland, it's like going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Suddenly she is able to see and experience maybe what was there all along, but not in her reality. So it's like a kind of like a key to like a portal to
Yeah.
the
And
most beautiful reality.
And yeah, I mean, the more I notice when I hold love in myself, that's what's reflected back to me. And as you were saying, in nature, life just becomes more vibrant and colorful and beautiful and joyful, and all of those emotions that we actually have been trying to seek outside of ourselves. And an experience that I had not even that long ago, where I suddenly realized that actually it isn't anyone else or anything that necessarily makes you feel love. The love is already within you. It's just something that sparks it and opens it. And if we can just cultivate that naturally within ourselves, having that love for ourselves and for others, and being responsible, as we were talking about earlier, being respectful of other people's views and opinions without having to, meet at loggerheads just because we don't agree with each other. I mean, what then could be possible?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oftentimes when we think of love, it seems very our view of it is like, oh, it's congenial, it's go with the flow, and move towards just getting along, right? But that's a hidden trap,
Right.
because if that's how we live, then we're not following our inner guidance, and we end up again flowing down the mainstream, right, which is being directed by some hidden hand, so to speak, right? And so I think it's really important to know that yes, oftentimes love is demonstrated through kindness and
Presence.
yes, and other times love takes courage.
Yeah.
Love takes a lot of courage. Like it means standing up, speaking your truth, and even in the face of controversy.
Mm.
because there's a if there is a love of life, a love of the creator, a love of what's possible here, then we have to have the courage to stand for it, to speak up for it. And that could feel in opposition to love if we think that love is just all, cuddly, sweet, right? Love encompasses a grand view and mission here,
right,
in this lifetime. And so love needs to, and this is where, the great mother comes in, right? So the great mother, which they're passive civilizations that were successful. Oh, there was always a great mother, that looked over, multiple civilizations even. And she worked in unison with the king of the time, or she held the power because she had the love of all, like everyone was her children, and this very, very strong. And we've been disconnected from the great mother for a very long time. And this is why, we have the patriarch, the society that we find ourselves in, not because men have done whatever, right? But just simply because we have forgotten about the great mother. And motherhood has become distorted. Even like we think, when we think of motherhood, and so it's interesting if you ask a young person, so what do you want to do with your life? And she says, we'll say like an 18-year-old, right? And she says, oh, I want to be a mother and have a family. Usually there's a pause, and then the person asks, well, what else do you want to do? Like that's not enough. Like that's like, oh, inferior to some, like, oh, I want to be a doctor or lawyer or this or that, or I want to, whatever. I want to help the environment. Like, oh, that's a worthy cause. But to say, I want to be a mother.
yeah.
Maybe in the 1950s, it's like, oh, yes, women had a desire to be mothers, right? But we're at this point now where it's been deflated. The motherhood, the idea of motherhood, the feminist movement did a really great job on this attacking motherhood unintentionally, of course. And really, the feminist movement is really it's really anti-feminist. It's not feminist. It's not for women. It's actually against women, against mothers. And we can have a whole conversation on that, but without going too far into that, the idea of being a mother and the idea of motherhood no longer has the place in society as it once did. And when we have a civilization, a society without strong mothers, without a great mother, then just right off the bat, we're missing a core fundamental building block of freedom and sovereignty and everything that comes with that. And so my vision for the near future is the revival of motherhood, the revival of the great mother, that we have a transformation, and we re-embrace motherhood. We embrace the important role of mother. I mean, without mothers, we don't have a civilization. Like right there, that's the core essence. You say, well, like babies in pods, or surrogates, or whatever, right? But that's artificial. And what's artificial is unnatural, and what's unnatural is evil. It's the opposite. Evil backwards is live, lie, right? So it's the opposite. So when we move away from nature, like in this example, creating human beings artificially, we lose something. We lose a part of our humanity. And on the opposing side, so to speak, that when we move towards motherhood, that is the most natural thing there is. And when we hold motherhood in esteem, and we support that and value the mother, then things begin to change.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that women can't, have any aspirations that they desire. That's not, I'm not taking that away. What I'm really pointing to is that we examine our views on mothers and motherhood at this point. Motherhood, I think, is the core, the key to civilization.
Well, because when we nurture the planet, we're nurtured back. And, you made me think that, certainly since probably the 1950s, as you mentioned, women have struggled between making that choice, because I think most women can say that naturally that yearning for children does come at some point in our lives. And then, maybe we also want something more like, a career, or just doing something that we love, whether we call it a career or not, and finding
Yes.
that balance. And then, of course, we hear stories of some women that have missed out on the motherhood because they've chased what they thought was the path of success and fulfillment and everything, and then, got those things, and then sort of
Yes.
realized, well, actually, I wanted that. And how
Yes.
that
Yeah.
then leaves us feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Often, like, there's a void or something's missing.
Yeah.
And, every woman is different. And this is not about, making a grand statement about um, the feminine role, but it's really about refocusing our attention on the true intrinsic value of motherhood. I mean, we create people, it's like literally, like, what, like, we want to make a difference in the world. Well, we have children, and there's no such thing as a perfect, mother or parent, right? But if we do our best to raise conscious human beings, my goodness, what an incredible contribution to the world.
Yeah.
And I think this is what has been largely missing for many, many generations.
Yeah. And that also impacts how we um receive from the mother, because if
Yes.
we're in a trying to find the words, if we're in a culture is probably not the right word, but where we're just, we want it all now, and we are very destructive in how we go about um utilizing the resources from our mother, from Gaia. And
Yes.
there's no, real consideration, and it's done. I'm sorry, I can't find the words that I'm probably looking for. But when we have that more nurturing role, and perhaps what you were talking about earlier is the tribes, we would take and give back, take and give back. It wasn't just take, take, take. And that seems to
Mhm.
be where we're finding
Yeah.
ourselves right now. So if things transform and people start to embrace this awakening, and start to become more conscious and making conscious choices,
Mhm.
what do you think this new earth could look?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So during this last summer, I was boating with my family down in Lake Powell, just absolutely amazing. And I was um, contemplating the planet and having this conversation with Mother Earth, in my head. And she told me that there is nothing that humans could do to destroy her. That idea is ridiculous, that she is so powerful and so full of abundance in every resource that we could possibly ever need or even dream of, that it's laughable to think that we could actually do harm to her. It would be like having some ants in your house, right? There, it's not, you don't want ants in the house, but they're certainly not going to take the house down. Like, that would be ridiculous to be like, oh my God, I've got, these ants and like it's going to take my house down. Like, it's ridiculous. That's how Mother Earth sees our participation. And so, yes, we absolutely do need to rediscover that reverence for Mother Earth. But we also need to understand that there is so much abundance, that overpopulation is not an issue. Like, the earth is, most of the earth is not even inhabited by humans. Like, we're clustered, in cities and territories and areas, but like the what we've been told about the resources and the limited resources on Earth, this is one of the things to question, right? It's a complete lie, and this can be backed up by evidence if a person has the discernment to go out and actually ask the questions about what's going on Earth. And I think that's a really important question, because Earth is our home. We understand Earth, that that the only time that there is a decay or a lack of resources is when there's nefarious interference, either directly or through propaganda, making people believe that there's a limitation or there's a problem. Right? We've all been brainwashed to a certain extent, right? And to really come out of that false dream, that false narrative that we've been fed, and to actually find out for ourselves, where are we? What is Earth? What is it capable of? What is our relationship to Earth? Like, very few of us have ever explored this. And to really, so we talked about the connection within oneself, but it's also the connection to Earth.
Well,
we all come. Right. And so, if we discover that truth for ourselves, what Earth is and what she's capable of, and the incredible resources that are available to us, and then we start to actually take control, right? Because right now, what's happened is that we've just gone along. We're born into this to this reality, and we're told certain stories and history, right? And we believe it, and without question, and et cetera, and we arrive here where we are now, right? This moment of chaos, right? And what, at a primary level, in addition to going within and discovering who we are and getting in touch with our intuition and listening to it, we also need to do this with and for Mother Earth.
Yeah.
Like, to really, like, in a very personal, intimate way, discover who and what Mother Earth is and what's possible. And people say, well, if Mother Earth is abundant with all these resources, then we'll just continue to do what we've been doing with. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that as human beings, like, we have a compassion, like a natural compassion for each other and for Earth. And by knowing the truth and being aligned with the truth and understanding the abundance of Mother Earth and connecting there, that I believe that our natural tendency would be to act in reverence of Earth, act in reverence of all her resources. And this becomes the transformation for what's possible. And this is a whole nother topic into itself, but we're so close to rediscovering free energy. We're so close. And it's, Tesla, he didn't discover it. What he did was reverse engineer it. That's what he did. He reverse engineered, right? It has existed on this planet and there's evidence. There's and how could it not be? Right? Like, so just like we have air, well, there's ether. And before modern uh, science and education, ether was always considered, it's like the elements like ether, which is, everywhere. It's the air that we breathe, it's everywhere. And it's electrical. It's full of energy. It's everywhere. If you're really sensitive to it, you can feel it. One way is like meditation by just holding your hands in your lap, like just cupped. And you do that for a little bit and you start to feel like, oh, there's like an energy ball there.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can even, right. And that's because this energy is everywhere. And it's limitless. And that we have the ability, like we actually have the technology to harness this free energy. And that's a game changer. That's a game changer. And that hidden hand that's, guiding that mainstream, of course, doesn't want us to, discover that, because then it's game over. Whatever game that they're orchestrating, right? Free energy for everyone, everywhere, is a game changer.
Yeah. And as you were just sharing, a few thoughts popped in. And of course, over the last couple of years when we had all the restrictions in place, we did witness a lot of Earth and the planet replenishing because we weren't out there consuming and, all over it, shall we say. And also, the planet's been through many shifts and changes, revolutions, ice ages, all sorts of things going on, and still she's evolving and going. So it also raises the question and if everything is energy and we're energy, the thing that we're expending the most is our personal energy and all of this consuming and doing and busying around. And perhaps it would create a reason to just slow down a bit and actually start to enjoy life a bit more. Not, oh, well, I'll enjoy life when this happens or if that. Mm-hmm. And that's what, how we tend to go about life, waiting for something before we can be something. And mm-hmm. if we start to conserve our energy more and only invest it in the things that we need, and I don't know where I'm really going with this, but it shows me that we can have a much more enjoyable, loving world to be living in. We don't have to be pushing ourselves to the point of exhaustion and aging and degradation and dis-ease, because we've kind of slowed down and we're going with the flow with the cycles of the earth. And kind of lost my train of thought. Yes. But that's what
right. We that was beautiful, Victoria. We move back into harmony.
Yeah,
with harmony. The earth.
Right. Yeah.
Who has a resonance and a rhythm. And right now we're not in rhythm. Even they changed the standard music, I think right after, somewhere around World War II, right after World War II. And there was a reason for that. So I believe it was 432 hertz and they moved it to 440.
Right.
It's just a little thing like that. Doesn't seem like a big deal. But that represents, just being mistuned, is that a word, with the earth. The earth, there's a frequency, there's a natural frequency. And so when we're in a physical body in tune with the earth, life is magical. It's like miraculous. Right? And when we're not in tune, that the feedback system of life shows us that. And that's when we experience, problems and issues and crisis. It's because we're not in tune. And life, Mother Earth, universe, that all is pushing us to get back in tune. And right now is this opportunity for the attunement. I'm using
Right.
that word correctly. This is what's upon us, which is so exciting. And so even going within and finding that natural rhythm or pulse of life, of earth, of yourself, like it's all harmonious. And you can feel it when it happens, right? And you can also feel it when it doesn't happen, when we feel anxious and stressed or overwhelmed or depressed or whatever it might be. It's because, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but at this very fundamental level, it's because we're not in sync with the natural energy. And our bodies are telling us that well, we're out of sync. And then we stop, like as you were wisely sharing, we stop and we sync back up with nature, which we are part of. And now nature works with us. And, I mentioned earlier how powerful the earth is and how powerful we are, and that we actually are integral keys for the earth. So instead of being like an infestation, as some want us to believe we are upon the earth, that we are actually miraculous.
Yeah.
We are, we are miraculous beings with a purpose that is in alignment with Mother Earth, and that our thoughts and our beliefs influence reality and even create reality. And so we've heard a lot about, predictive programming, and what that really is that we're fed some story and we believe it for whatever reason, right? We believe it. And then through our belief, like if enough of us believe the same thing, then whatever it is manifests. And that's because we're tied in directly to Earth, to this energetic system. And when we have a thought or a belief, and especially like if it's, a group of us do, then we actually end up creating that. And so in order for that hidden hand to actually affect life, that what that hidden hand does is focuses on altering or controlling our thoughts and beliefs in order for us humans connected to earth to create that reality.
Yeah. Spot on. Yeah.
So, and so we could say, oh, well, I could change my thoughts and beliefs, but if no one else is, what good is it? And
Well, and it's not easy to change our thoughts and beliefs just like that. That's,
no,
I think I've
no,
heard that, day by day, we're thinking 80% of the same thoughts we thought yesterday, right? And like you say, that's creating the same
yes,
looping system of our reality.
yes,
And if we're all
yes,
buying into these fears, then we're creating a fearful world. And then that has that effect on this consumerism, because we're in this fear that we're going to run out of stuff and there's not going to be enough to go around. So we've got to keep keep holding it away, and we never
yes,
rest.
yes, exactly, exactly, yes. So, if there's one thing that we can do to align with freedom, it would be to, if nothing else, to refocus our thoughts, even if we don't believe it first. This the old idea of the affirmations. What that really is like you're planting desired thoughts, ideas into your subconscious mind. And if you do that enough, and then you start to take action in alignment with those affirmations, those empowering thoughts, then reality transforms accordingly.
Right. And you're creating a new neural pathway in your
Right. And that neural pathways, not just in the body, the mind body, but it actually extends out beyond the body. And this is that electromagnetic field that's everywhere. And so it's like, maybe you can imagine like one of those the Tesla coils with the energy, like you could see the energy moving it. Well, imagine that we are inside of this an electromagnetic field, and that everything has an electromagnetic field, and that our thoughts, particularly our thoughts, are always touching that electromagnetic field, not just within our body, but outside. And it's having an effect all the time. And what happens that if, like, even if the mass majority of people are, in fear, which it can seem like, which I don't actually believe, but it could just seem like that. If we are responsible for our own thoughts, where we focus our own minds on a day-to-day basis, then what happens is that imagine like that energy coming out of your mind body. You're actually emitting energetic waves, and other people around the world who are also emitting that same resonance of electromagnetic waves, that actually connects at some point. Like it's like a magnet, right? They seek out. So right now we're having this conversation and people are listening to us, and we're at the place where we agree and we resonate together right there. Like that's all connected. And now anyone else that is along that same resonance with their thoughts and feelings in this moment, whenever this moment is, right, then they're connected too. And it's exponential.
Yeah.
It's exponential that when even a small group of people are aligned and in resonance with nature, with earth, that it creates an invisible ripple effect that goes out and is available to everyone everywhere. And in a nutshell, that's those of us who feel like we're here for a purpose, for a reason, whatever that might be specifically, on a grand level, this is it. This is it, to participate, in creating a thought field that is in alignment with love and life and nature, and doing that consistently. You don't even have to be perfect, but consistently. You fall off the horse, you get back on it consistently, and connecting with others who are also doing that.
Yeah. It raises the frequency.
Yes, and it doesn't just raise the frequency, but it creates these pathways. So like the neural network that you mentioned, like inside, the human brain. Imagine that is everywhere, around the earth, right? Everywhere through the earth, right? This is, and so you're sending out, like, imagine like lightning bolts, maybe, right? Just as a
I'm
visual.
thinking of roots of a tree and how they interconnect and send messages
Yes.
to other trees.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's everywhere. And then the more of us who participate, then that energy becomes available to more and more people, and it becomes easier for them to tune in, to tap into that wavelength. And this is truly on a organic level how we transform our world,
Yeah.
and we are doing it.
And becoming the new human. So let's would you like to share? I think you've got some tips that you might
Can I
like.
just comment on that quickly?
Yeah.
So the new human, I think, has been, among other phrases, hijacked, right? And so the new human in the mind, so to speak, of that hidden hand, is moving towards the artificial, towards transhumanism, towards technology, right?
Yes.
That's what they're considering the new human. I think of it more like the true human, the true human. And this is not, technology is wonderful, but we have all the technology within us. Like
Yes.
we have turned
Divine
many of
technology.
the internet has become God, right? So you have like 50 years ago, if you had a problem, you might sit down and meditate or pray and ask for guidance, right? Now you have the same problem, and the first thing that people do is they get on their computers or their phones and they search it. It's like, so instead of God, like Google has replaced God in many ways. And and this is truly uh, I'm trying not to say Luciferian agenda, but I'm just going to say that that it is, the Luciferian agenda is to replace God in a nutshell. And people don't, they think, oh, it's going to come through this person or this thing, but actually it's the internet, and we don't even know it.
Well, because then we're disconnected. We're connected to something online, but we're not online in our bodies. And the God that is within, that divinity is, we're not tapping into that source of intelligence, and what we were talking about at the beginning of our call, and how to navigate using that inner guidance and the feelings of does it feel good, does it feel bad? And that's so simple, yet we spend all this time stressing and searching outside of ourselves for the answers that we already have within.
Yes, beautifully said. So yes, so rather than becoming the new human, which it seems to be artificially enhanced in ways and moving away from God, that we turn within and we revive the true human, who is connected to everyone and everything and has powers beyond belief, beyond belief. Like anything the internet can do, God can do better. The internet is just trying to imitate God. And if that is true, that anything that the internet, God could do better, and that is within us, consider the power that we each possess within our own beings. It's ineffable.
And I'll add that, when we're fully connected to ourselves, we don't need to necessarily worry about that technology getting into the wrong hands, and all of those other stories that we could delve into, because we're coming from our authenticity. And as we said earlier, when we make a choice for ourselves that's right for us, then it naturally becomes right for whoever we're interacting with, or the bigger picture.
Yes. I'd like to say one more thing, and I know we're coming to a close, but anybody who has gotten to a certain threshold of consciousness has likely encountered a period or periods of loneliness. That it can be very lonely to wake up, to evolve, to become conscious.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I've been kind of tracking this for a long time. And over the past few years, consciousness and the number of people who are actually becoming conscious, it's been exponential, and it continues to be. And the reason that many of us still feel very much alone is because we haven't quite figured out how to connect with each other, because we may be surrounded with a family and friends, well-meaning, they're connected to fear, they're connected to old disempowering beliefs, they're connected to this reality that was created through this hidden hand. And so we're surrounded, and we don't know or have an ability, so we think, to connect with other people who are also conscious.
Yeah.
And they are out there, we're out there, and we just have to have the courage to speak up more, speak out. And I'm not talking about like you have to convince anybody or wake anybody up, but just the reason that it's important to speak your truth is so that other people who also know the same truth can connect with you.
Yeah.
That's the reason, not to try to wake up family or friends or anything like that, but so that you can be recognized
Great point.
by other conscious people, right?
Yeah.
this is beginning to happen, and if we could each take responsibility for that as well, right, to make our voices heard, whatever that might mean, and send out the call, that we'll start to connect. And once we start to connect with each other, it's
it will spread, build.
It's yes, yeah, like that, exponentially. Yeah.
No, that's so true. And it can be a lonely time and confusing time. And even if you do speak up again, like you were saying, if we're all at different levels of consciousness and waking up, sometimes that can be tricky because you might be met with defensiveness or people just not, not ready to hear what you've got to say. And I think it's like you say, it's so important to just keep speaking up, because each time you do, you're just planting little seeds, and that will slowly start to awaken their authenticity, their consciousness within, in whatever time it takes for them, and of course, if they choose to awaken.
Yes, well said.
So
Exactly.
would you like to share some tips for people who are tuning in to our conversation on, what it means to really become this true human?
Oh, there you go. That's funny. Whoever's listening is likely already within this field of consciousness. So that's wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. I see three steps to really break it down. And the first step is the willingness to become conscious, the willingness to become conscious of what's going on inside and also what's going on outside, and that interaction. Right? And the second step is taking responsibility for all of it.
Yeah.
Even if we don't know how we're responsible, to take responsibility, because without responsibility, we have no power to change or transform anything. That's the true definition of somebody who is or feels powerless. But so in order to be empowered, we must absolutely take responsibility. In fact, the amount of power that we have to influence life is directly related to the degree of responsibility that we take for life.
Yeah.
So that's the second step.
Wow.
And the third step is to take action.
Yeah.
And that requires oftentimes courage and facing, our fears of being excluded or censored or disliked, or it's a requirement to face those fears. And yes, we might be, somebody might try to censor us or decide not to like us, and that's okay. That's okay. In fact, if that happens, then we know that we're making a difference.
Right.
And the other thing that happens is beyond certain fears that might manifest, like not being included or being censored or whatever that might be. If we keep going, we discover who we really are, how strong we are, how powerful we are, how beautiful we are. And if we keep going, others discover who we are, others who are also on the same wavelength, the same resonance. And ultimately, the field is love.
Yeah.
And as we contribute to that through our consciousness and responsibility and taking actions, we are making a difference in ways that cannot be counted or described at this point in our evolution.
True.
And every choice makes a difference. A wise person once told me that if you don't make the right choice, you have to live with the wrong one.
Mm. Wise words.
Yes. Yeah.
Nanice, as we come to an end of our time together, I think I'm really just struck by how our conversation, it's evolved and how it's made me feel. And it does feel more expansive and open. And there's just this feeling of extraordinary potential that we all have, not only for ourselves, but for this world that we want to create and live in. And I know for me, it's always been one of just immersing myself in this beautiful nature and being in awe of it, which we are a part of. So thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And that too is guidance when we feel that expansion, when we feel, the contraction, we're moving away from nature, from earth, from God, from source. When we feel the expansion, we're moving towards. So what's wrong feels constricted and tight, right?
Yes.
And what's right or true feels open, expansive, exciting.
Yeah.
That's our intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So would you like to tell the audience how they can find where they can find more about you and how to connect
Yes.
with you?
Yes. The best way is to go to my website, which is very simple. It's just my name, nanice.com. So that's NANICE.com. And I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles on my website, been written in the course over 20 years. And it's all available. It's all free. I even have a spiritual awakening teleclass that's available on my website as well. Um, I have tons of articles on healing trauma and tons of articles on spiritual awakening and everything under the sun you can find on my website. So, and I also have meditation. There's guided meditations available on my website. I have uh, um, archived radio shows from my Chai with Nanice podcast, about 160 of them. They're also on my website. So it's all there. It's a ton of information. I have a desire to share as much as I can possibly share and continue to. So it's all available on my website. And then as a free gift to our listeners, if you go to my website and you browse the books, you choose a book and email me, and I'll give you my email address in a moment. And email me, and I will send you a digital copy of that book that you choose. And or if you prefer, my books are also listed on Amazon. So you can just put my name, Nanice Ellis, in Amazon and just look for all my books. And there's probably, I think, about 8 books listed. And let me know which one you want. And email me and I will send that to you. So, and there's books from, have Escaped the Matrix of Depression, Even Gandhi Got Hungry, Buddha Got Mad, Lip Prints, The Infinite Power of You, uh, Seducing the Field, Is There a White Elephant in Your Way? So there's a whole bunch of choices, and you can browse the description and decide which one you want. And just email me and this is the email address. So it's just my name at myname.com. So Nanice at Nanice.com. And in the subject line, just put in freedom, freedom. And I'll know that you're emailing me for a book and I'll send that right off.
What a big heart you have. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Victoria. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you. You're wonderful.
Such a privilege. Thank you for being here. And I myself feel incredibly blessed because you've touched my life and enriched it in so many ways on my own path to personal freedom. So I thank you for that also. So
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for showing up. Like truly. Thank you for being a light in this world. You're a beautiful, beautiful being, a beautiful goddess. And I'm so grateful that we are creating this today together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've been speaking with Nanice Ellis, and she's a transpersonal life coach, supporting people all over the world to claim their life and live their dreams. And if you're looking for a platform where you can access support on your personal journey to freedom, come join us. I hope you'll explore, have fun, and connect with others. And you can find out more at wearetac.com, which is weartacc.com, the Academy of Conscious Creators, empowering you to create a new story of your life.